Once upon a time, in a place that seemed to exist outside the boundaries of the world, there lived a boy named Jack. His eyes carried a quiet storm, a restlessness that not even he could understand, as if he were always searching for something he had never held. The wind seemed to follow him, whispering secrets he wasn't ready to hear, and the sun painted his mornings with both warmth and a strange melancholy. Jack's life had always been ordinary in the eyes of those around him. He laughed, he joked, he moved among people with a gentle ease that made others think he was content. But beneath the surface, a quiet loneliness tugged at his soul, a sense of yearning that clung to him like a shadow at dusk. It was on a day that seemed no different from any other that he first saw her Losse. She appeared like a flicker of light in a world that had grown gray with routine. Her presence was effortless, almost ethereal. The way she moved, the way her hair caught the sunlight, the softness of her smile, it struck Jack with the kind of force that takes your breath away. Time seemed to still itself the moment their eyes met, and though neither of them spoke, something unspoken passed between them, fragile yet undeniable. Losse was unlike anyone Jack had ever known. There was a strength in her gentleness, a fire in her calm, and an elegance in her chaos. Her laughter could make the air itself tremble with warmth, and yet there were moments when a shadow would cross her eyes, a secret sorrow that whispered of a life she carried quietly. Jack felt drawn to her in a way he could not name, a magnetic pull that made him both afraid and alive. The first words they exchanged were simple, almost trivial, a comment about the weather, a small smile, the clumsy humor that comes from nervous hearts meeting. But every syllable was a thread, weaving them together in a tapestry neither could yet see. Jack could feel it in his chest, the rapid thrum of a heart learning to beat for someone else, the quiet fear that this connection was too fragile, too fleeting. Days turned into weeks, and their paths crossed with increasing frequency. Each encounter left Jack more enthralled, more desperate to understand the girl who seemed to illuminate his world while concealing pieces of herself he longed to touch. They walked along silent streets, shared stories beneath starlit skies, and laughed until the ache in their sides mirrored the ache in their hearts, the ache of knowing that joy could be so fragile. Yet, as often happens in tales that twist the heart, happiness arrived like a fragile candle flickering against the wind. Jack began to notice the shadows in Losse's eyes more clearly, a sorrow that she did not share, a past that seemed to whisper warnings he could not understand. And still, he could not pull away. Each moment with her was both intoxicating and terrifying, like holding a flame that could warm him or burn him completely. One evening, as the sun sank low and the horizon bled colors no painter could capture, Jack found himself walking beside Losse in a quiet grove where the world seemed to pause. She spoke softly, her words brushing against him like the gentlest wind. "Do you ever feel," she asked, eyes tracing the colors of the sky, "that life is both beautiful and cruel at the same time?" Jack swallowed hard, feeling a lump form in his throat. He wanted to tell her that he understood, that he had felt that same strange mixture of joy and pain since he could remember. But the words stuck, fragile and fleeting. Instead, he took her hand, hesitating only a moment before intertwining his fingers with hers. It was a small gesture, but it carried the weight of every feeling he had ever refused to name. Losse's hand fit perfectly in his, and for a moment the world felt right. The kind of right that makes you believe in fate, in destiny, in love that can survive even the harshest storms. And yet, somewhere deep in the corners of their hearts, both Jack and Losse knew that happiness of this kind was never simple. There were secrets, there were sorrows, there were forces beyond their understanding that would challenge the bond forming between them. Night fell and the stars appeared, countless and indifferent. Jack looked at Losse, her face glowing softly in the moonlight, and felt a trembling mix of hope and fear. He wanted to tell her everything about the longing he had felt since childhood, about the moments of loneliness that had carved themselves into his soul, about the way she had become the center of his universe in the blink of an eye. But words failed him. Instead, he whispered a promise, quiet and unadorned. "I will be here, no matter what." Losse looked at him then, truly looked, and in her eyes, Jack saw both gratitude and an unspoken fear. She leaned against him, resting her head lightly on his shoulder, as if seeking both comfort and protection. And in that quiet embrace, Jack understood something profound, that love was not only about joy and laughter, but also about bearing pain together, about facing the unknown with courage, about holding on even when the world seemed bent on pulling them apart. The days that followed were filled with small, tender moments, shared glances, secret smiles, fleeting touches, yet each was underlined with a tension that neither could ignore. Jack began to see glimpses of the past in Losse's eyes, shadows that hinted at hardships, betrayals, and heartbreaks he could not erase. And still, his resolve only deepened. He would face whatever came, past, present, or future, if it meant protecting the fragile flame that was their love. But the world, as it often does, had other plans. A single encounter, a careless word, a hidden truth revealed, would soon threaten the delicate balance they had built. Jack and Losse would be forced to confront pain in ways they had never imagined, testing their hearts and their courage. And yet, even in the face of uncertainty, even as tears threatened and storms gathered, a quiet, unyielding truth remained. Their connection was real. Their love, though fragile, was undeniable. As the chapter of this beginning drew to a close, Jack and Losse stood side by side, gazing into a horizon neither could fully comprehend. In their hearts was a mixture of fear, hope, longing, and love, a cocktail of emotions that would carry them into the trials and triumphs that awaited. And though the night was dark and the path uncertain, one thing was clear: their story had only just begun. The days after their quiet evening in the grove felt almost dreamlike. Jack and Losse moved through them like two fragile creatures discovering a new world, a world colored with laughter, stolen glances, and a closeness that neither had dared to imagine before. Yet, beneath the surface of their shared joy, an unspoken tension lingered, a shadow creeping slowly into the edges of their happiness. Jack noticed it first in the way Losse would sometimes drift into silence, her eyes distant, fixed on something only she could see. He would reach for her, ask softly if she was all right, but she would always smile, soft and sad, brushing off the question like a leaf in the wind. He knew better. He had learned to read her in ways no one else could: the slight tension in her shoulders, the tremor in her voice when she spoke of nothing, the fleeting sadness that darkened her eyes before it vanished. It was on a gray morning, with clouds pressing low against the horizon, that Jack sensed the first real challenge to their fragile bond. Losse had received a letter, one she had hidden from him until the moment she could no longer pretend. The envelope, heavy and lined with a weight that made Jack's heart thud, contained words that would change everything. He watched her hands shake as she opened it, her lips parting slightly as if to breathe in courage, and then the tears came, slow, deliberate, and unrelenting. Jack could only stand by, helpless, as the woman who had become the center of his world crumbled in his arms. "What is it?" he asked, his voice thick with fear. Losse shook her head, unwilling to speak, but Jack did not let go. He held her close, letting the warmth of his body remind her that she was not alone, even as the storm of whatever past or truth she had uncovered raged within her. Finally, through broken breaths and trembling lips, she whispered fragments of the letter. A warning from someone who had once loved her, a reminder of secrets she had tried to bury, a betrayal that had left scars deeper than anyone could see. Jack's heart ached with a pain he had never known. The idea that someone he loved so fiercely had been hurt before, hurt in ways he could not fix, tore at him. And yet, he refused to let it define her, to let it define them. "We will face it," he said, voice firm, holding her gaze. "Whatever this is, whatever comes, we face it together." Losse looked at him, eyes brimming with fear and hope alike. For a moment, it seemed as if the world held its breath, waiting for her to decide whether she would let him in fully or retreat behind the walls she had built to protect herself from a lifetime of pain. She chose him. And so they faced the days ahead hand in hand, but the world, cruel and unyielding, was not yet done testing them. Shadows appeared where they least expected them, whispers in the wind, people from the past who seemed determined to rewrite their story, and the persistent weight of unspoken fears. Jack's resolve was unshakable, but even he could not shield Losse from everything. One evening, as they walked beneath a sky streaked with fiery reds and bruised purples, a figure appeared, someone from Losse's past, someone whose presence alone carried echoes of betrayal. The confrontation was brief but intense. Words were exchanged, old wounds pried open, and the delicate bubble of safety Jack had tried to create around their love seemed to burst. Losse stood trembling, caught between fear and defiance, while Jack's heart screamed at him to protect her, to take the pain upon himself if only he could. When the figure finally left, disappearing into the shadows as suddenly as they had arrived, Losse sank to the ground, exhausted and shaken. Jack knelt beside her, gathering her into his arms. He whispered her name over and over, as if repeating it could somehow rebuild the pieces of her shattered courage. "You are not alone," he said. "Not now, not ever, I'm here." Tears fell freely then, mingling with the first raindrops of an unexpected storm. The rain soaked them both, but neither moved to escape it. It was as if the world itself was crying with them, acknowledging the depth of the bond that had been forged not through ease, but through adversity. Over the next days, they navigated the aftermath. Jack learned more about Losse's past betrayals that had left her wary, mistakes she had been forced to make for survival, secrets that had shadowed her every step. He listened without judgment, held her without hesitation, loved her with a depth that left no room for doubt. Yet the tension never fully disappeared. In quiet moments, Jack would feel a flicker of fear. Fear that Losse's past would one day claim her from him, that the forces of fate would test their love beyond what their hearts could endure. Losse herself struggled with guilt and doubt, haunted by memories she wished she could erase, unsure if she deserved the love that Jack offered so freely. It was in these moments of quiet tension that their love grew strongest. For Jack, love was not just about joy or passion. It was about steadfastness, about being present even when the heart ached. For Losse, love was not just a refuge, but a challenge. To trust again, to let go of old wounds, to allow herself to be vulnerable. Their bond, fragile and luminous, began to deepen. Every smile carried a promise, every touch a reassurance, every shared silence a declaration of unspoken devotion. And yet, the world beyond their fragile cocoon remained unpredictable, a reminder that the story of Jack and Losse would not be written in simple strokes of happiness. As the second chapter of their tale drew to a close, Jack and Losse stood at the edge of a cliff overlooking a river that sparkled under the moonlight. The wind whipped around them, carrying the scent of rain and earth, the promise of storms yet to come. Jack took Losse's hand, feeling the familiar tremor in hers, and whispered a vow that neither time nor trials could erase. "No matter what comes, we face it together. Our love will endure, always." Losse leaned into him, allowing herself to believe, if only for a moment, that love could indeed conquer the shadows of the past. In that embrace, they found a fragile but unbreakable peace, a peace that would carry them through heartbreak, betrayal, and the storms that still awaited beyond the horizon. And so, beneath the indifferent gaze of the stars, their story continued, a story of love both beautiful and cruel, of hearts tested and healed, of a bond that would be both their greatest strength and their deepest vulnerability. The world outside their fragile haven was not kind. Jack and Losse had begun to understand that love, even when it burned bright, carried with it shadows that could not be ignored. Their bond had grown stronger, but with each passing day, the weight of secrets, doubts, and past betrayals threatened to bend them in ways neither could anticipate. It was on a morning painted with the pale light of dawn that the first real test arrived. Jack awoke to find Losse gone, leaving only a note, folded neatly, almost carefully, on the pillow where she had rested. His heart sank as he read the words, each one a dagger of uncertainty. "Jack, I have to face something from my past. I cannot do it with you watching. I need to go alone. Please understand." Jack's hands trembled as he held the paper, the words echoing in his mind. He felt the familiar storm of fear and helplessness, the same fear that had gripped him in the grove, in the rain, in the moments when life's cruelty had revealed itself. But this time he could not reach for her. She had gone, leaving only the shadow of her absence. For hours, Jack wandered through the empty streets of their timeless world, the memory of her smile and the warmth of her hand in his lingering like a bittersweet ache. He knew that Losse's past held challenges he could not face for her, but the longing to protect, to hold, to fight for her, consumed him. Each step he took was heavy with the weight of unanswered questions and unspoken fears. Meanwhile, Losse navigated a world she had hoped to leave behind forever. The streets she walked were familiar, Yet each corner reminded her of mistakes, betrayals, and choices that had left her scarred. Her heart ached with the thought of Jack, of the love she feared might be strained by the shadows she carried. And yet, every step she took was necessary, not just for her survival, but for the future she hoped to build with him. Days passed, and the distance between them became a silent, unrelenting force. Jack waited, packing, restless, consumed by worry, while Losse confronted the ghosts of her past, fighting battles that had been left unresolved for years. Each night, Jack stared at the horizon, imagining her face, her voice, the fragile laughter that had become his anchor. And each night, he whispered her name into the wind, a prayer carried on hope and desperation. "Losse, come back to me." When they finally met again, it was not under the soft skis of dawn or the quiet grove that had witnessed their first moments of intimacy. It was in a place heavy with tension, where past and present collided with the intensity of a storm. Losse approached him slowly, eyes wide, lips trembling, carrying the weight of truths she had finally dared to confront. Jack's heart raced as he took in every detail, the way her shoulders drooped slightly, the subtle trembling of her hands, the light in her eyes that had survived the darkness. He stepped forward, reaching for her, and she fell into his arms, her body shaking against his. Words were unnecessary. The embrace itself spoke volumes. Love, forgiveness, relief, fear, and hope intertwined in a silent symphony of emotion. But the reunion was not without its challenges. Losse's past, though confronted, had left scars that would take time to heal. She shared stories of betrayal, of trust broken and rebuilt, of pain endured in silence. Jack listened with patience and unwavering devotion, holding her as she spoke, never judging, never withdrawing, never faltering. The days that followed were a delicate dance between healing and tension. Moments of laughter and joy emerged, small victories against the weight of the world. They walked together beneath skis painted with amber and rose, spoke softly under stars that seemed to witness their journey, and allowed themselves to dream, however cautiously, of a future together. Yet the shadows lingered. In the quiet moments, Jack sometimes caught himself staring at her, a flicker of fear crossing his features. Could they survive the trials that seemed ever present? Could love, even as fierce as theirs, withstand the lingering ghosts of the past, the unpredictability of life, and the relentless march of fate? Losse, too, wrestled with doubt. She had known love before, fleeting and fragile, and feared that even now happiness might be a mirage. But in Jack's steadfast gaze, in the steady rhythm of his presence, she found courage. And slowly, tentatively, she began to believe that love could endure, that the bond they shared was stronger than the sum of their fears. One evening, as a storm approached, they found themselves sheltering beneath the eaves of an old, abandoned building. Rain lashed against the walls, wind tore through the open spaces, and the world outside seemed intent on testing them. Yet within that fragile refuge, Jack and Losse held each other close, a sanctuary against the chaos. "I've never felt anything like this," Losse whispered, her voice trembling. "I've never loved someone as deeply as I love you, Jack." Jack kissed her forehead, holding her tighter. "And I've never been so certain of anything in my life. We'll survive everything, Losse, together." As the storm raged outside, they found a quiet strength in each other. Their love, tested by distance, shadows, and the ghosts of the past, had not broken. It had grown, deepened, and taken on a resilience neither had known before. In that moment, Jack and Losse understood something profound. Love was not simply about happiness, but about endurance, about standing together when the world tried to tear them apart. And as the rain continued to fall, mingling with the tears they could not hold back, they held onto each other with a ferocity born of both desperation and hope. Their hearts beat in unison, a testament to a bond that had been forged through trials, strengthened by sorrow, and illuminated by the promise of a love that would not be denied. The night passed, leaving behind the quiet aftermath of the storm. Jack and Losse emerged into a world cleansed by rain, their hands intertwined, their hearts stronger for what they had endured. And though challenges remained, though shadows still lingered, one truth was undeniable. They were together, and together they would face whatever the world had in store. Life has a way of testing even the strongest hearts. For Jack and Losse, the calm after the storm was brief, a fleeting illusion that the world had granted them only to remind them how fragile happiness could be. They had survived distance, shadows of the past, and the weight of unspoken fears, but the universe had more trials in store, subtle, relentless, and insidious. It began with small fractures, misunderstandings, fleeting frustrations, moments when the unspoken fears between them surfaced. Jack, usually so patient, found himself irritated at times by Losse's hesitation. And Losse, still haunted by past betrayals, occasionally withdrew, uncertain if love could truly last. Neither wanted conflict, yet the tension simmered, like a storm gathering on the horizon. One evening, as the sun dipped beneath a sky ablaze with crimson, they walked together along the edge of a river. The air was heavy, still, carrying the scent of earth and rain. Jack glanced at Losse, noticing the furrow in her brow, the way her hands fidgeted with a strand of hair. "Losse, what's wrong?" he asked softly, trying to keep the edge of frustration from his voice. Losse hesitated. She wanted to tell him, to unload the fear and doubt that had taken root in her heart, but words failed her. Instead, she shook her head slightly, offering a fragile smile. "Nothing," she whispered. "I'm fine." Jack wanted to believe her. And for a moment he did. But the uneasy feeling lingered, a whisper in his chest that warned of storm clouds yet to come. That night, as they sat together beneath the dim glow of lanterns in a quiet corner, the truth finally surfaced. Losse confessed that someone from her past had returned, someone whose presence threatened the fragile life they had built. The confession fell like a stone into the quiet space between them, heavy and suffocating. Jack felt a rush of anger, fear, and helplessness. "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" he demanded, though the words sounded hollow even to his own ears. I didn't want to burden you," Losse said, tears brimming in her eyes. "I thought I could handle it alone. I didn't want us two to fall apart." Jack's hands gripped hers, his knuckles white. "Losse, we're in this together. You never face anything alone. Do you understand me?" She nodded, the tears spilling over, mingling with the storm of emotions between them. In that moment, they both realized something crucial. Love was not only about passion and tenderness, but also about facing fear and uncertainty together, without pretenses, without hesitation. Days passed, and the tension between them grew more intense. Jack became increasingly aware of the subtle ways in which Losse's past intruded upon their present. Whispers of people and events she had long tried to forget reached their ears, each one a reminder of the fragility of their happiness. Yet, even as shadows threatened to divide them, their connection remained strong, an unbreakable tether binding them to each other's hearts. It was during one such moment of unrest that the first true test arrived, not from the past, but from the heart itself. Jack, driven by a combination of love, fear, and frustration, confronted Losse about a misunderstanding, a fleeting rumor that had made its way into their lives. The argument, though brief, was charged with raw emotion. Words that had long been restrained burst forth, anger, pain, and the desperate need for honesty. Losse stood her ground, tears streaming down her cheeks. "Jack, you don't understand. You can't see everything I've lived through. You don't know what it's like to have your heart broken and still be told it's your fault." Jack's own voice trembled. "I do understand, Losse. I love you. I've been here through everything, and I'm still here. But you have to let me in, you have to trust me." The air between them vibrated with emotion, a storm of passion and pain that neither had expected. And in that moment, something fragile shifted, a fracture in their love, subtle but undeniable, a reminder that even the strongest bonds must sometimes endure pain to survive. Yet even as their hearts ached, they could not stay apart. The fire that had drawn them together refused to be extinguished. In the quiet aftermath, they found themselves clinging to each other, trembling, crying, and laughing all at once, a tangle of emotion that only true love could create. It was in these moments of vulnerability that Jack and Losse learned the most profound truths about each other. Love was not simply about joy or comfort. It was about endurance, about surviving conflict, about choosing each other even when the world seemed bent on tearing them apart. The following days were filled with a mix of tenderness and tension. They laughed, fought, loved, and healed in a delicate dance, each moment deepening the bond that neither time nor trials could sever. And though the shadows of fear, misunderstanding, and past pain still lingered, Jack and Losse embraced the reality that their love was worth every struggle. One night, as they lay beneath the stars, the cool breeze carrying the scent of rain and earth, Jack whispered to Losse, "No matter what comes, we face it together, always." Losse, resting her head against his chest, closed her eyes and allowed herself to believe. "Together," she whispered, "forever." And so, beneath the indifferent gaze of the universe, they held each other, hearts entwined, souls aligned, ready to face whatever trials awaited them. For Jack and Losse, love was not only a flame. It was a force, unyielding and eternal, forged in fire, tempered by pain, and illuminated by hope. The path ahead would not be easy. Betrayals, misunderstandings, and unseen dangers lurked just beyond the horizon. But for now, in this quiet moment of intimacy and trust, they had found something priceless, each other. And that, they knew, was worth fighting for, worth every tear, every heartbreak, every test that life could throw at them. Thank you so much for watching part 1 of Jack and Losse, the love that fought the storm. If you felt the emotion in their story, don't forget to hit that subscribe button, turn on the notification bell, and leave a comment below about your favorite moment. Part 2 drops tomorrow, and trust me, it's even more emotional, full of love, heartbreak, and destiny you won't want to miss. See you tomorrow, my beautiful viewers, same time, same place. Red.